Anybody have any idea why I've got 611 up on the board there? Someone who hasn't heard me speak, did the same presentation?
It's 2 times the number of shopping days left until Christmas.
Well, maybe that's the truth, but that wasn't my intent. 611 is the average number of days that it takes from the time you miss your first mortgage payment until you actually get foreclosed on for a residential property. You see here in California, 611 days it takes to foreclose on you. Some of the other areas, Clark mentioned Washington, D.C. in his presentation, 1,053 days. 40% of the people who are in foreclosure or in default right now have not made a mortgage payment in at least 2 years. Now, my wife and I talk all the time. We're like, what if we didn't make a mortgage payment for 2 years? How much money can we save? We could probably move to like Kansas and buy 2 houses. Now, our credit would be ruined. We wouldn't be able to go to the shopping center and buy anything there, but we'd have a lot of money on it.
Better basketball in Missouri, Chris.
Better basketball, exactly, yes. So I'm not necessarily condoning that, but I'm trying to show you what is affecting the residential real estate market right now nationwide, and I'll deal a little bit more specifically with San Mateo County or the Mid-Peninsula. 2 million loan rejections nationwide. Half of those were because of low appraisals. Now, I don't want anybody to raise their hands, but I'm sure if I go around the audience here, there's somebody in the audience who tried to refinance last year, and because the appraisal came in low, they could not get the loan that they wanted. So that's having a tremendous effect upon the residential real estate market. And the reason for that is that appraisers are under very strict guidelines. If we look back during the boom days, maybe 07, 08, this pendulum was way out here. The appraisers basically said, what kind of number do you want? Chris, what number do you want me to bring this in at? I'll bring it in at, we'll get the loan done. Now it's all the way to this end where they say, I don't know if I can do this deal. And it's because they have to appraise according to condition, location, view, and the type of sale. And you might say, well, that sounds pretty rational. It is rational, but under each of those is at least 6 subcategories that they have to appraise to. And as a result, a lot of these appraisals are coming in low. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to sell real estate or to refinance. Does anybody have any idea how many business days, you know how many shopping days there are, but does anybody have any idea how many business days there were in 2011? There are 252. Okay, so there were 259 underwriting rule changes for residential mortgages last year. So that basically means that for every business day of the year last year, there was more than one underwriting rule change. Can you hear me okay without this microphone? Okay, so imagine you've hired a great real estate agent and you're going to sell your house. You put the property on the market, the property looks great, it's priced right, and you get a buyer. It's a well-qualified buyer. You've got another real estate agent on the other end representing the buyer. You're like, hey, you know, I can start packing, I can go ahead and move. 30-day close of escrow. Well, 30-day close of escrow, you're probably going to have, what, 22 business days during that close of escrow? So 22 business days means, at least last year, there were probably 22 underwriting rule changes. So one of those rule changes is probably going to affect that well-qualified buyer. You know, no big deal, we can work through this. Maybe we're looking at a 45-day close of escrow now. Well, if the rule change is significant enough, maybe that well-qualified buyer no longer can qualify for that loan. So they may have to go to another lender who isn't going to observe that underwriting rule change. Or maybe you lose that buyer altogether simply because they can't qualify for that loan anymore. So you think it's easy to sell real estate? My wife used to think so until I got in the business, and now she realizes it's very difficult to negotiate all these challenges and get to a successful close, especially if you're trying to refinance. These definitely have an impact on refinancing. So my map is not as nice as Clark's map, a little cartoonish, but basically the rest of what I'm going to tell you about is pertinent to the Mid-Peninsula. Cash buyers. You look at that and you say, okay, where did our buyers come from, or what types of buyers do we have? 11.5% of those were cash buyers. And you might think, well, that's pretty significant, especially given our price point. If we compare that to other areas of the country, to Kansas or Missouri or wherever, they're looking at more like a 30%. 30% of the buyers are buying with cash. Our price point is such that there just aren't as many people that can buy with cash. That does have an impact on our market. Overseas buyers, I'm not sure what if you do any leases with overseas companies, but we're seeing a lot of money coming in from Asia right now. I had several transactions last year, clients coming in from Asia. Maybe they don't even live here, they just wanted a second home here. I have a buyer right now just down the street in Foster City that has an international trade business. They're from China. They're buying a house in Foster City just because they want their kids to go to school in Brewer Island Elementary. So that has a big impact on our market. And then tech buyers, all those companies, the logos you had up there, Clark, those are having a big impact on the residential real estate market. Has anybody heard the term flying around recently, the Facebook effect? So, I mean, the Facebook effect could apply to anything, but it really is applying to, it's going to apply to residential real estate, mainly on the South Peninsula, but is going to have an effect up here too. A lot of the tech buyers are maybe high-income programmers buying a property. They're driving our market. I had a transaction last year, and I can point to many examples of this, where people liquidated, for instance, Google stock and paid cash for a property. So that is really driving our market. And then lastly, 30% of the people got some type of gift to buy property. There's a lot of money on the Mid-Peninsula. And that 30% getting a gift might apply to the kids buying the first property and mom and dad giving them $10,000 to help out with the closing costs. All the way up to a deal I had last year where grandma said, you know what, I will buy the house and I'll give you the house, and essentially I'll carry a below market rate note on the property. You don't have to even pay me back. It's 2.5% interest rate. So there's a lot of that going on that's driving our market. Okay, everybody's talked about, did I hear somebody say they like to have a grandma like that? So distress sales. And when I say distress sales, I mean foreclosures or short sales. And you look at this, especially if you own a home around, they say, my God, 21% of our market is a distressed sale compared to the 5% historically. And that seems like a huge number. Does anybody here own property in Sacramento? Or maybe Fresno? So, you know what I'm talking about. 80% of the market there is distressed sales. So we, by comparison, maybe even Clark and out in Pleasanton, that's probably a 50% distressed sale market. So we are not affected as much as some other areas around the country, or especially other areas in California. Most of those sales, the distressed sales, are between $200,000 and $800,000. Once you get over 1.2 million, they're almost non-existent. Occasionally you hear about that house in Hillsborough that got foreclosed on, but there are not enough of those to even impact the market. So, Dave, you're with the city. I'm not sure how the revenues work, but is anybody here with the county? County of San Mateo? So imagine you're with the county and you're trying to create a budget around transfer taxes. And you look back at 2004 and you say, boy, there were a lot of properties that changed hands in 2004, but there was a lot of revenue coming in from transfer taxes. And even though 2011 we started to see a recovery in the number of properties that changed hands, we're still down 36.9% from what we were during the boom. So I can imagine how difficult, if you're dependent upon transfer taxes, it makes budgeting for the cities and the counties. Did you have a question?
I would just say back in 06, 07, we got about a little over $10 million in property transfer tax, and 2 years later, it dropped $7 million.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's quite a swing.
That's definitely significant. Now, I don't know if it was Gail or Linda that sent out the email and said, try to incorporate some of the characteristics of leaders into your presentation. So here's my attempt at that. I couldn't identify anything on this list that I could use, but I'm getting there. Wait a minute. So when you're a lead, what was I not supposed to give that away? So when I think about a leader, I think someone who not only has a vision, which I think is on here, but someone who is willing to stick it through the through the ups and the downturns. You talked about the downturn in the commercial market. I'm sure that there were downturns at the shopping center there, but she hung in there. You said, hey, I've got this vision for what I want to do, and I'm going to stick with it. The number of transactions are down. That means that there isn't much business to go around for real estate agents. 50% of the real estate agents who were in business, even here, are gone. So when I talk about leadership, there are a lot of people that just threw up their hands and said, well, I'll go get a job somewhere else. So that's my attempt at putting the All right. So 36.9% fewer transactions. And Dave, along your line of comment, couple that with the fact that prices are down by 15%. And you look at that and say, my God, 15%, have I really lost that much in value in my property? Maybe. This is an average. Real estate, just like commercial real estate, residential real estate is hyper local. We can be right here and then go on the other side of the freeway, on the other side of El Camino, all of a sudden see that prices have gone up significantly. Maybe the number of distressed sales goes down significantly, so it all has to do with your neighborhood. 15% is the average, but if I look at Baywood, for instance, or Aragon, those areas, they really haven't been affected, maybe a few percent. If I look at condos, condos might be as much as 30% down from what they were. If I look at properties in San Mateo on this side of the freeway, they're down maybe 30%, so it's very hyper-local. So maybe the 15% doesn't apply to you as much as it could, or maybe it applies more than it could. Okay, so here is my projection for 2012. We're already into 2012. I just want to give the caveat, okay? My projections are if interest rates stay low. Okay, I should remember that. It was an E that I cut the edge off. So if interest rates stay low, I think the rest of these are going to happen. Lenders are going to loosen their lending criteria. The reason I say that is anybody who could refinance last year did. So now the lenders are saying, how are we going to get more business for 2012? They're going to have to loosen their criteria. Remember, they were way over here like, we'll do a deal, we'll loan. If you're breathing, we will lend you money. To over here where I've had people that have had $3 million invested that's fairly liquid, and they said, we can't do a loan for you. So the pendulum is going to swing back towards the middle, so they're going to relax the standards a little bit. Slight increase in the number of sales. Prices are going to be flat, and that's, again, if interest rates stay low. We have a decreasing amount of property for sale right now, and we have more buyers because the interest rate's chasing those, so that's going to stabilize our market. And buyers are going to continue to be very picky and sensitive. They're price sensitive. I put that in there because if any of you called me up and said, I want to sell my property, I'm going to get top dollar for it now because you just told me that the market's going to recover. I would remind you that when you're selling residential real estate, you are in a beauty contest and a price war. You have to have a well-priced property, just like commercial real estate, and it's got to look really, really great or you're not going to get top dollar for it. And last thing, we're in a steady number of short sales and foreclosures. There is no worry on the Mid-Peninsula for any of the shadow inventory being released. And you probably saw there was some settlement on the whole robo-signing scandal in the last week. I think it was in the Daily Journal today. Even if they do get all of that resolved and release the foreclosure inventory around here, inventory is low enough that there are enough buyers out there to buy it without any significant impact on prices. So that's, let me go one more slide, even though it says the end. Never mind. Anyways, in there somewhere I've got a slide that talks about residential rents. And rents right now, Clark was talking about the dot-com boom. Rents are higher now for residential properties than they were during the dot-com boom. And if you think back during the dot-com boom, people were just throwing around each other's money. Companies would recruit you to the Bay Area and say, we'll cover your rent. That's how I got to the Bay Area back in 2000. They paid my rent. So think about today, rents are higher than they were back then when money was basically free. So as far as people thinking to buy right now, with interest rates being low, prices being down, and rents being extremely high, now's a very good time to buy residential real estate. So anyways, there's the official end. Yes?